The greatest error a man commits is assuming a woman develops feelings while gazing at his face. Your mind tricks you into believing that if the date went wonderfully, if she chuckled at your humor, if you covered the check at an upscale spot, and if a farewell kiss occurred, you've already secured the victory. You return home tallying points in a mental ledger, convinced that her curiosity is gouged by how much enjoyment you both experience together in that instant. And that is precisely why so many men wake the next morning to a distant message, a confusion they cannot grasp, or an abrupt, "I need space." Right when they believed everything was proceeding flawlessly, you track each second beside her, you weigh your phrases cautiously, and you pretend to avoid missteps while she's before you. Yet the bond slips through your grasp because you're fixated on creating a quick impression, and you possess zero awareness of what transpires when she's by herself. If you stay trapped in that falsehood that affection is constructed merely through presence, you will keep suffocating the curiosity of the women you desire, constructing connections on fragile ground, and questioning why your attempts crumble without evident cause. Remain here for the next 25 minutes, because today you will step beyond the surface to grasp how a woman's emotions and thoughts genuinely function. By the conclusion of this exploration, you will not only recognize the profound blunder you've been functioning under, but you will also obtain the precise tool to decode her curiosity, empowering you to manage quietness and separation with a certainty that will never again hinge on her affirming you constantly. There exists a significant insight that the neurologist and psychiatrist Viktor Frankl noted when examining human urges. That which we chase with excessive intensity is, by inherent principle, the very thing we ultimately drive away. In the domain of attraction, this converts into total blindness on the man's side. The typical man assumes that romance operates like a toggle switch. If you possess a decent physique, if you project confidence, if you have wealth, or if you offer her an entertaining outing, the switch flips instantly. But everyday reality repeatedly smacks you in the face and demonstrates that it's not that straightforward. How often have you observed a woman lose curiosity in a man who seemed to have everything, who was the ideal candidate? How often have you sensed that despite having enjoyed a wonderful afternoon, her demeanor shifts entirely the next day, and she feels as remote as if you needed to begin from scratch? That's where a man's mind fractures. It generates a deep unease, a frustration that compels you to review every phrase seeking the flaw. Did I say something incorrect? I should have taken her elsewhere. You search for the fault in what you did or spoke while together, entirely overlooking that the true judgment is not signed beneath the date's light, but in the darkness of her room, after you've already departed. That worry that consumes you while you await your phone screen to illuminate with a message from her is the symptom of hunting for answers in the incorrect location. The thinker Zygmunt Bauman, when exploring how human bonds develop, proposed that relationships do not become strong because of what we experience in the moment, but because of how we process it afterward. Physical magnetism and the initial laughter are merely the entryway. They are instinctive responses to what is before you. However, the passage that moves from simple attraction to profound affection is not constructed with the hours spent together, but with the imprint you leave in her when you exit. Consider those patterns that consistently repeat in the background. A woman can have a fantastic evening with a man who bends over backward to dazzle her. She can admire his attire or his eloquence. Yet as soon as she returns to her daily routine in the morning, the image of that man vanishes from her thoughts without a trace, like a commercial you forget moments later. Conversely, with another person, perhaps on a less extravagant outing, more modest or even uneven, her mind wanders back repeatedly and involuntarily, to a nuance, to a pause, to the warmth of a look that made her feel authentically understood. Something continues to resonate inside her. It's a quiet accumulation, an unseen puzzle where each exchange is not a definitive test that you've either won her over or failed, but a minor emotional mark that stays stored in the depths of her consciousness. When she finds herself alone in the stillness of her room, on her commute, or listening to any melody, her memory doesn't start calculating how much money you spent, or how flawless you were. What emerges in her mind is the answer to a question she will never voice aloud, but that determines everything. How do I perceive myself when I'm with him? If the time you shared contained genuine attention, if you were real, and not a persona, her mind will begin to link those moments in your absence. The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard explained that memory is the only authentic possession we have, because the present escapes our grasp in an instant. In a woman's psychology, affection genuinely starts to thrive right in that space. When your presence becomes larger in her mind, precisely because physically you are absent, leaving a gap that her own reflections and her longing to see you must fill. That void that remains when you depart is not an empty space, it is the fertile ground where real curiosity either takes root or perishes forever. Many men perceive distance as a hazard, an adversary that will make her forget them, and that's why they make the desperate error of trying to occupy every hour with texts, memes, or trivial questions to forcefully stay on her radar. What they fail to grasp is that by doing so, they are disrupting the natural progression of emotional processing. It's as if you planted a seed and dug it up every few minutes to check if it has sprouted. The psychologist Carl Jung explained that the human unconscious communicates through symbols and sensations that require time and stillness to integrate into the mind. When you overwhelm a woman with your digital presence right after a date, you leave her no room to long for you. You don't give her the chance for her mind to recreate what was experienced. Physical attraction is immediate, yes, but affection is gradual. It's a process that unfolds at a different tempo. She may genuinely like you physically on the first meeting, but that doesn't mean a bond already exists. Mistaking attraction for affection is the reason many men accelerate when they should learn to move slowly, assuming that an initial, "I like you," is already a promise of endurance. The truth is that female affection is built like a brick wall, one piece at a time, quietly and almost imperceptibly. Every time you speak from your authenticity, every time you exchange a knowing glance, every time you respond calmly rather than reacting with insecurity, you are placing a brick in position. No single moment by itself appears decisive. A single conversation won't make her obsessed with you, but the accumulation of all those instances creates a robust structure in her mind. It's a sequence of impressions that initially seem separate, but that over time start to connect in her thoughts, until suddenly something clicks inside. At that precise point, the dynamic transforms completely. She no longer just enjoys your presence when you meet on weekends. She begins to sense you in her everyday life, even when there are miles of separation. Your name is no longer just that of a guy she sees, it's a recurring thought that brings a smile to her face during a dull afternoon at the office. But for those impressions to link, the adhesive of solitude is needed. That space where she processes her emotions, and where the resonance of your character continues to reverberate, even though you are no longer there. It is in that absence that the secret lies, which no cheap seduction tactic can teach you. The great distinction between the man who merely attracts and the man who inspires affection lies in what occurs when they part. The man who only aims to impress leaves behind a sense of spectacle, like a firework that blazes brilliantly but lasts moments. The woman has fun, but upon arriving home, the stillness of her room entirely extinguishes the effect. In contrast, the man who connects from a deeper level leaves an emotional resonance that continues to breathe hours later. It's a remark you made that returns to her thoughts uninvited while she sips her coffee. It's the warmth of an embrace that still seems to soothe her body the next morning. It's the anticipation and curiosity of not knowing exactly when she will see you again. That's what sustains the interest. The philosopher Erich Fromm, in his renowned examination of the art of loving, mentioned that true love is not a transaction where favors or surface-level courtesies are exchanged, but a state of internal presence that is upheld in maturity. When you manage to create that experience, distance ceases to be a threat and becomes your greatest ally, because it is precisely in the space after the date that she starts to miss you, to romanticize your actions, and to realize that you have become someone distinct from the rest. That is why the question you should ask yourself before sleeping is no longer the typical doubt full of worry that plagues insecure men. What do I need to do on the next date so she doesn't forget me? Or what message do I send her now to capture her attention? That mindset only reveals that you view the bond as a machine you have to keep feeding coins to constantly so it doesn't shut off. The real question that reshapes your stance and restores your sense of worth is much more profound. What feeling lingers in her after experiencing something with me? That is where the path splits between those who plead for attention and those who inspire connection. It's not about organizing the most extravagant date or acting like a mysterious figure from a film to appear intriguing. It's about the weight of your genuineness, about whether you could hold her gaze with assurance, whether you made her feel protected, heard, and intellectually engaged. If you succeed in making the experience of being with you a sanctuary from the falseness of the outside world, you won't have to pursue her or check your phone constantly, because the significance of what you shared will continue to work for you in her thoughts, making her seek you out for the simple and powerful reason that her life feels improved when you are part of it. For that impression to remain fixed in her mind, the encounter must be free from the need for validation. The most common error of the typical man is transforming into a professional people pleaser during the date. He agrees to everything, mirrors her preferences, avoids any disagreement to prevent conflict, and goes out of his way to prove he's the friendliest and most secure guy around. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche explained that there is nothing more dull and less appealing to the human being than the total absence of resistance. When you become predictable, you fade into invisibility. A woman cannot process an emotional resonance with you if during the time you shared you acted like a mirror reflecting only what she desired to see. Affection needs contrast. It requires that you be capable of voicing your own viewpoint firmly, of laughing with playful irony, of establishing boundaries if needed, and of sustaining that light tension that pushes her out of her comfort zone. It's not about being rude or aloof, but about being a genuine man. When you are able to maintain your position without fear that she will be upset, you automatically earn respect in her psychology. She senses that you are not attempting to purchase her affection with hollow kindness, but that you possess a solid inner world to which she is invited, yet which does not rely on her approval to exist. This is what triggers the subsequent mental processing. When she returns home, she does not find herself with the memory of yet another admirer who tried to win her favor, but with the figure of an authentic man who challenged her intellectually and emotionally, planting a doubt she won't easily shake from her thoughts. That solidity is what separates surface attraction from the bond that endures over time. When a woman is alone again in her environment, her intuition analyzes the nuances that went unnoticed during the conversation. The way you handled an awkward instant, the alignment between your words and your physical cues, or the composure with which you responded when things didn't proceed as expected. If she detects that you were pretending to impress her, her mind activates a silent alert that immediately halts any emotional advancement, even if the date seemed flawless externally. The humanist psychologist Carl Rogers stated that true connection only happens when we allow ourselves to be seen as we are, with our strengths and our flaws. If she feels that behind your actions there is a confident man who doesn't need to conceal his imperfections or boost his ego, a space of complete safety is created. It is in that refuge of authenticity that she realizes that with you she can lower her guard and be herself without masks or social expectations. And it is precisely that feeling of freedom and peace that she starts to miss when you are no longer present. The memory of your company is no longer linked to the rush of an exhausting seduction game, but to the deep comfort of having encountered someone real in a world full of facades. It is there, in the stillness of her daily routine, where the initial physical attraction begins to shift into an invisible connection that compels her to seek you out again, not on a whim, but because your emotional resonance has become a necessary part of her own contentment. This security is not built with rehearsed speeches or grand promises about the future. It is built in the consistency of the small details, those that occur in the background, and that the male mind typically overlooks entirely. The philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer, when investigating human passions, explained that a person's character is not revealed in grand battles, but in how they handle the most trivial everyday situations. When you are with her, the way you treat the server, the focus you give when she shares a work concern, or the way you honor her time without pressuring to gain something in return, are the true threads that weave her perception of you. A desperate man seeks the quick impact, the grand gesture that dazzles her in an instant, but the mature man knows that trust is a slow, growing plant. If she perceives a gap between the persona you are trying to sell and your real actions, the affection process stops immediately. The female mind has an exceptionally sharp radar for detecting inconsistency. On the other hand, when your behavior is natural, predictable in its decency, and steady in its course, she begins to feel a sense of order amid the usual chaos of her interactions with other men. She doesn't need to decipher hidden motives or play guessing games with you. She knows exactly where she stands. This clarity produces such a profound mental ease that when you leave and she returns to the quick and impersonal patterns of her daily life, the memory of your presence becomes a draw. Her mind returns to you seeking that respite, that stability that only you knew how to convey without needing to raise your voice. The real danger appears when the man, upon noticing that she is beginning to show genuine curiosity, gets frightened and undermines the process out of pure uncertainty. It's a destructive cycle that repeats constantly. As soon as she opens up a little, he becomes emotionally overwhelmed, starts demanding clarity, wants to know who she's communicating with, or becomes overly available, completely ruining the space of absence. You must understand that female affection advances in waves. There are moments of great closeness, followed by intervals of withdrawal, where she needs to step back to assimilate what she is feeling. The analytical psychologist Erich Neumann called this the dynamic of psychic assimilation. The soul needs to retreat to the desert of solitude to convert lived experience into a lasting bond. If at the moment she pulls back a couple of inches to breathe, you jump on her with complaints, missed calls, or suffocating attention, you disrupt the natural rhythm of the connection. What was previously a pleasant echo in her mind suddenly transforms into unbearable stress. Your ability to remain steady and composed during her moments of silence is the trial by fire that will determine the course of the relationship. Upon seeing that your value doesn't falter because she takes a few hours to reply to a message, she understands that she is not dealing with a child seeking a mother, but with a complete man who knows how to walk alone. That certainty removes her doubts and allows her to return to your side with the confidence that she has found solid ground to settle. For that return to be lasting, it is vital to understand that the human mind does not fall for perfection, but for uniqueness. The philosopher Baruch Spinoza explained that desire is nothing other than the very essence of man, insofar as it is conceived as determined to do something by virtue of some affection whatsoever. Translated to current dynamics, this means that she is not going to become attached to you because of the list of generic virtues you possess, but because of the unique shades of your personality that become imprinted in her memory. The great mistake of the average man is to blend into the crowd, wear the same trendy attire, repeat the same discussion topics, and adopt a neutral position to avoid being criticized. By doing this, you become entirely interchangeable. If any other man can offer her exactly the same experience, there is no compelling reason for her mind to return to you in the privacy of her silence. What truly triggers the subsequent affection process is the rarity of your authenticity. It's that particular combination of your humor, the passion with which you discuss your personal pursuits, or that unique way you observe the world without apologizing for being who you are. When you leave a mark that resembles no other, the absence becomes weighty for her. Comparison with the rest of her daily interactions becomes unavoidable, and that's where your presence starts to win. Not because you are actively competing, but because your emotional echo is the only one with its own distinct tone, recognizable amid so much noise. This unique imprint deepens drastically when you are capable of creating intrigue through emotional restraint. In the age of hyperconnectivity, where everyone shares their personal life on social media and reveals their emotions within the first minute, restraint has become the rarest and most compelling superpower that exists. The analytical psychologist James Hillman linked the human soul with the mystery of unexplored territories. That which is given completely and without effort loses its psychological value almost immediately, as it no longer demands any work of conquest or discovery. If in the first interactions you tell a woman your entire biography, your past struggles, your exact ambitions, and how urgently you need to find a partner, you destroy the mystery instantly. You remove from her mind the wonderful task of trying to decipher you. The art of inspiring affection consists of revealing only the tip of the iceberg, allowing her to sense that beneath that calm exterior, there is an immense depth that she will have to earn over time. When you say goodbye leaving questions unanswered, and showing that you have a private and exciting life that doesn't revolve exclusively around her, you generate an irresistible mental draw. Upon returning to her routine, she will not limit herself to remembering what you did. She will spend hours envisioning what you have yet to show, turning intrigue into a silent fascination that is only calmed when she is in front of you again. This silent fascination is the engine that turns fleeting curiosity into a true commitment of the soul, an invisible force that operates in the distance and completely redefines the framework of the bond. Having reached this point, the balance of the relationship has taken a decisive turn without the movement being noticed on the surface. The man who understands this deep dynamic stops pursuing, stops sending desperate messages, and stops seeking control because he understands that the bond no longer depends on his physical persistence, but on the emotional gravity he has managed to plant in her mind. The philosopher and psychologist William James stated that the deepest trace we leave in others is not measured by the immediate impact of our words, but by the quality of attention and the fixation we sow in their consciousness when we are not present. When a woman experiences this level of connection, her behavior changes in a completely natural and organic way. Late or cold replies turn into initiative on her part. Routine excuses transform into clear proposals to meet, and silence ceases to be a void of uncertainty to become a bridge of anticipation. You are no longer the confused man who spends the night wondering what she is thinking alone, or if she is losing interest. Now it is she who finds herself smiling at her phone screen in the middle of her routine, reliving that conversation or waiting for the perfect moment to share with you a trivial detail of her day. Power has ceased to be a game of manipulation, tactics, or cheap seduction strategies to become a dance where your greatest appeal is not what you do to forcefully retain her, but the peace, respect, and absolute solidity that she finds in her own mind when she chooses to voluntarily return to your side. At the end of this long journey of discovery, we arrive at the ultimate truth of human behavior, a hidden secret that fits in a single line. A woman does not fall for you only because of what she experiences with you, but because of what she continues to feel with you when you are no longer there. Affection has never been a loud event manufactured with applause, luxury, and fireworks in the middle of a flawless date. It's an underground current, a quiet accumulation of impressions, memories, resolved uncertainties, and certainties that settle in the depths of her mind during the hours of isolation and daily routine. When you manage to replace the typical male anxiety of, "What do I have to do now to make her like me?" with the maturity and composure of asking yourself what echo and what feeling I leave in her when I depart, you stop being an actor seeking approval to become a real man who inspires unshakable respect. You have finally learned to decode the invisible code of absence, to navigate silence with the calmness and grace of one who knows perfectly well that his value does not vanish when the screen goes dark or when the door closes. From today on, you no longer need to watch every step or measure your words, as if walking on eggshells, nor beg for constant validation that makes you a slave to the present moment. Allow time to do its silent work, respect the sacred space where real curiosity matures at its own pace, and become that refuge of authenticity where she will always want to return. Simply because in a world full of empty reflections and desperate men, your echo is the only one that makes her feel truly alive in the intimacy of her own solitude,